I'm sorry, this letter from Caroline Hensley, do we have a copy of it?
That was something that I put on there from Marion Johnson Thompson's request.
It should be good. I'm asking for a copy of it because it said we have to, I don't have a copy.
I can try and pull one up on this. And did you send it?
Is that the letter?
Okay, then we can pull it up on here. Oh no, I don't think the letter. What letter? Wait, because that doesn't exist. That was the
Caroline.
They're two different things.
Renee, I'm going to sign off temporarily. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay, sounds
I'm updating my computer. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. I'll be back.
Thanks. Computer frozen. Set up. Little pictures. We'll take it. I know. Well, it's just not doing anything. I don't know. It's just my computer. Oh no! Now we're in business. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back.
Veronica's there.
Veronica, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Thanks for calling in. We appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Just for
I'm
what-
sorry I couldn't make it. I'm sure you had a great tour this morning, but
We did.
my calendar is a bit full this week.
We understand.
Okay, I'm going to go back to mute.
And she had said that
You were saying there are other groups of ones also finding their problems in there, but in addition to putting that was wrong.
So I told her she continued to tell she will unmute and speak from there. She has been.
Okay.
Yeah, I was graduated and all out. You guys work there and work with. That's what it is. I know he is. I got the. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think actually emailed me about art. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna watch. Veronica.
Yes.
Veronica, is it okay if I initial your name on the sign-in sheet and say called in remotely?
Sure.
Okay. We want to record that you are participating.
Okie dokie. Hey, right now I'm not getting any video. Am I just doing listening?
It's not video. There should be.
Okay.
Video.
All right. Well, I will play with another computer. I'm still listening, but I'll see what I can do on a different
Yeah,
laptop.
I don't see you either, but I see me and the group.
I see the panel. I don't see you, and I don't see me. So I'm going to go switch. I'll keep the link going on this one until I figure out what's going on.
Okay.
Okay.
You could also try calling with the clicking on the YouTube to get the video.
Gotcha.
That's another option.
At a last resort.
Yeah.
And I need to go get my headphones so I can get rid of my echo.
Okay.
All right.
And I have not heard
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're 2 minutes behind schedule already, so I want to take this opportunity to call our meeting to order. This is the August 21st, 2019 meeting of the NCDEQ Secretary of Environmental Justice and Equity Advisory Board meeting. I want to thank all of you for being here today, and I especially want to thank Joey Al for hosting us. You're most gracious host. We've had an exciting tour of God's country this morning, and we're grateful to you for putting that together and hosting us. Let me begin by our meeting by reminding all of you of the ethics, awareness, and conflict of interest rules in accordance with the State Government Ethics Act. It is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and the appearances of conflict. If any board member has any known conflict of interest or is aware of facts that might create the appearance of such conflict with respect to any matters coming before the board today, please identify the conflict or the facts that might create the appearance of a conflict to ensure that any inappropriate participation in that matter may be avoided. If at any time any new matter raises a conflict during the meeting, please be sure to identify it at that time. Thank you very much for paying attention to ethics, awareness, and conflict. You were sent an agenda. You have it before you. If there are no amendments to the agenda, I will entertain a motion to approve it as written.
Chair, make that motion to accept the agenda.
Properly second that we accept the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. You've also been sent, you have in your possession the minutes of the previous meeting. If there are no amendments, adjustments to those minutes, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
I had correction, and they had it with that, I'll move on.
Is there a second with that amendment? Moving properly second with the amendment that we accept the minutes as printed. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Wait, in Veronica.
Oh, Veronica. Oh, Veronica.
Yes. Hi.
Veronica, but I'm pointing out that you are our movie star today. Thanks so much. Moving right along, we're now at a point in our agenda for status updates, and that is Renee Kramer, who's the DD2 Title VI and EJ coordinator. And she's going to be assisted, or they're running shotgun with each other. Ms. Sheila Holden, Assistant Secretary of Environment. Thank you both for being here.
Okay. Okay. No. Okay. So these are going to be kind of quick updates. We just wanted to let you know about some exciting things that have happened. So since our last meeting, so actually yesterday, the department officially put out our draft public participation and limited English proficiency plan. And we are hoping that you as individuals, as well as you as the advisory board as a whole, would look at those and provide comments and feedback to us so we can make improvements with your knowledge. And the comment period is open for 30 days. And then the community mapping system, we have had that comment period, and that has closed. And currently we are working with our GIS wizard to see what we can do to implement those comments. And we've also had more detailed conversations with NCPHHS to work on more collaboration. Those are our plans, all the updates that I have on those. Unless Sheila has something else, she is going to turn it over to Executive Order. Thank you, Renee. Good afternoon, Chairman Johnson, members of the board. Good afternoon, Veronica. her seat is empty. I should just plug in. So, first of all, on behalf of Secretary Reed, I just want to say thank you again for your continued work on this very important board. And thank you, Joey, for hosting us. It's been a wonderful one. It's great to see the historic areas that the wastewater treatment plant. I would say that's one of the finished ones I've ever been to. And the school is just an amazing one. Thank you. And before I make my remarks, I want to acknowledge that Veronica Carter recently received the Pelican Award from the North Carolina Coastal Federation for her excellent work. And so I just want to give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
Today, I wanted to provide you with an update on the department's work under Executive Order 80. I know in our last meeting, Jennifer Mudd went through much of a very much larger overview, especially about the clean energy plan. I'm happy to report that we were able to release a draft for public comment last Friday. The comment period goes through September 9th. I know there have already been asked to extend the comment period. I would love to say yes. However, we have a hard stop under Executive Order 80 to deliver a final state clean energy plan to Governor Cooper on October 1st. So, and let me also say that the Interagency Climate Council is scheduled to meet on September 27th. So I know we're going to get lots of excellent comments, and it's going to take us a little bit of time to incorporate those and get a final document that will help guide us as we go through the next 10 years in implementing the recommendations and action plans that have been identified by the Clean Energy Plan. I just want to get a few highlights for you. The Clean Energy Plan says that these action items and recommendations are divided up into short-term, meaning things we believe that can be accomplished in less than 12 months, mid-term, which is 1 to 3 years, and longer-term, which would be 3 to 5 years. To get there, we had a fairly extensive stakeholder process that involved 6 facilitated workshops. We had 8 regional listening sessions and 4 combined events, as well as receiving a lot of online and direct input from interested parties all across North Carolina. One of the items that we tried to identify throughout that process is what are the values we want to embrace as we develop a clean energy plan for North Carolina. And so we had responses from about 460 individuals at different events, and environment and carbon reduction was received the greatest number of votes, and that's about 20% of the votes, followed by affordability, reliability, and environmental justice, all at each 7%. And then economic and job growth, equity, utility compensation aligned with public interest, and efficiency, all of it about 5%. So just to help you understand the feedback that we were receiving as we conducted the listening sessions with the stakeholders. From there, we crafted the vision of North Carolina's clean energy future is a system that's clean, equitable, modern, resilient, and efficient, in addition to being safe, affordable, and reliable. And so from that, from that vision, we looked at goals, and I'll just highlight the 3 primary goals. First, to accelerate clean energy innovation, development, and deployment to create economic opportunities for both rural and urban areas of North Carolina. Second, to foster long-term energy affordability and price stability for North Carolina's residents and businesses by modernizing and regulatory and planning processes. And finally, on CO2 front, by 2030, to reduce the electric power sector's greenhouse gas emissions between 60 and 70% below our 2005 levels, and work towards a zero emissions by
So from that lofty vision, those lofty goals, we created basically 5 strategy areas and actions. First, utility incentives and comprehensive system planning. Second, customer access to clean energy and economic development. Third, equitable access and just transition. Fourth, carbon reduction and resilience. And finally, fifth, beneficial electrification and energy efficiency. And I wanted to also highlight one of the recommendations specifically under fostering a just transition to clean energy. And let me read the recommendation. It's to ensure inclusion and meaningful involvement of historically marginalized individuals in decision-making regarding size and generation assets and implementing programs that will affect their rates, health, and access to clean energy and energy efficiency opportunities. Under this recommendation, there are several actions, and one relates to this board. And, the responsible entity would be our agency, and that our responsible action would be to support the Environmental Justice and Equity Advisory Board on energy issues, informing the board of relevant energy issues and supporting their evaluation of those issues. So obviously we anticipate this is going to be a key priority for both the EQ and the board, and just wanted to highlight that. You all may want to provide some feedback and other recommendations around this particular issue. That certainly we welcome your input on all those elements. And so what I would say is that the comment period is open. Obviously, we look forward to seeing and hearing from you as you contemplate the energy plan. It is not a small plan. It's pretty big. There's also supporting documents that are about to be posted later this week, which makes the review time even larger. But do encourage you to focus on parts that were all of it and provide feedback to the agency. As we wrap up the clean energy plan, we will then turn all of the focus that we've had on developing the clean energy plan to working on the climate risk assessment and the resiliency plan that we also talked about briefly at our meeting in May in Charlotte. And I know one of your main comments was we need to be getting out to those communities that are affected. So we're actually working to get that set up, particularly with Florida, and sitting down and spending time with Columbia, given how impacted they have been, not only in recent years, but in the future. So we want to get that perspective and begin to hear from the affected communities in a meaningful way. So I want you to know that effort is underway. We've spent a lot of focus on the clean energy plan that I've included as the first phase of the plan. We've got to turn our focus to the climate risk assessment. I will stop there and see if there are questions. And there is one more update that Sherry will indulge me. That is on the Kolesh litigation.
Any questions from the board?
I would like to acknowledge that there are people trying to listen and watch, and then let several folks put their heads. Yeah, I guess it's above that. So is YouTube working better? Usually YouTube is a little more stable, but it's not right now. I can send out the letter. So Lisa's going to send out the WebEx information. We apologize if we aren't able to get in.
Veronica, do you have questions at this point?
No, sir, I don't. I took some notes. I'm good. Just, Renee probably sees me moving around. I'm trying to get all my electronics situated. But thank you. And by the way, DEQ also received a Pelican Award in the Division of Coastal Management. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them. And Dr. Braxton Davis and his crew.
Thank you.
So at the last meeting, we had the department had just left up its determinations on the 9 remaining coalition hamlets for which a final closure has been determined. and I kind of walked you through those decisions. I also let you know that there was ongoing litigation. There has been a recent update to that litigation. Following the pre-hearing statement, the North Carolina Department of Justice filed a petition, partial motion to dismiss for certain elements. And on August 2nd, we heard from the judge in that case, Judge Selena Malherbe, and she granted DOJ's motion. So basically, she dismissed the following claims. First, that he elected the method of closure for each of the non-coalition elements. Second, that he erred in making its closure elections before Duke Energy submitted its final closure plan. Third, that he erred in using a comparative standard for its election decision rather than yes or no standard set out for DEQ's review of the closure plan. And finally, she denied the claim that DEQ had erred in determining that closure plans must be fully implemented by December 31st, 2029. So those issues will not be part of the case as we go forward. We are beginning the discovery process. Depositions are set to begin in September, and we anticipate a hearing at some point in June. So I will continue to keep you posted. I know this has been a topic of great concern not only to the board but to the public in previous meetings. So I'll stop there and see if there are any other questions.
Veronica, anything in this?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Oh, you want me to hold up there?
Oh, am I on?
Yeah.
Sure. We have a clicker, or I have
I'll
to just handle it.
I can stand here, yes.
So, well, thank you all for allocating some time for me. The presentation that I want to share with you is an offshoot of some work that we have been doing for the North Carolina Department of Transportation on the disaster business. And I thought that the work was relevant to what we're doing at DEQ. We've had some conversations with the Secretary and the DEQ and the Department of Administration about not only focusing on solving problems of racial injustice and inequity, but how do we recognize that environmental justice is a business. People spend tons of money on environmental justice, but the question becomes, how much of that money evolves to the benefit of historically underrepresented businesses and their life? So what I want to talk with you about today is this notion of moving toward inclusive and equitable supply chains in the environmental justice about and how you get at those things. We can just shoot for a second.
There we go.
So my simple premise is we want to figure out, I do, and let me apologize, I'm a business professor, so I think of things about where there are opportunities. We have to create sustainable businesses and sustainable jobs, and I think in this space that there's an opportunity. I'll share with you my thinking. So my central premise is that we need to figure out how do we link environmental justice and economic inclusion. Then I want to share with you some key data points and questions that triggered my interest in this when I look at the work that we are charged to do here. And I want to talk about a way to move toward ensuring that the environmental justice business is inclusive and equitable, and that I want to argue that it is a strategic imperative for us because these issues are not going to go away. We need to figure out how to create sustainable businesses and jobs for those things. Next slide. Please ask questions along the way if you want to. So if you look at the definition of environmental justice, I just pulled it from the EPA website, that environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. That's kind of what we charge to help people think about. There's nothing there about how much money is spent doing this and who gets it. And who gets it. Next slide. Typically, we advocate for the prevention and or remediation of environmental injustices. Rarely do we demand economic justice in the resolution of environmental justice. Much of the money that goes into it, federal dollars and state dollars, and certainly with the federal dollars, the federal government says what? That you have to make a conscious effort to be inclusive in the expenditures of those dollars. Now, sometimes inclusion means you only have to demonstrate a concerted effort that you've done this, made a good choice, but that's not the issue for me. The issue is how do we look at these issues and how do we not only clean up environmental messes, but in the process create opportunity in the form of business and jobs for people who are impacted by those ideas. So there are so there's some key data points, and I want to use disaster recovery as an illustration here. Next slide.
It has a little trouble catching up.
I can take a nap for a minute. Okay. So Hurricane Matthew, recovery funding, $914 billion from the Fed, $300 billion from the state, $1.25 billion in cleanup. Who could tell me how much that money went to? Historically underrepresented. Or how many jobs were created in cleanup to help the very community that? And the number. There you find the number. There you find the number. There you find the number. Next slide. I got a serious question for you. How many homegrown North Carolina small businesses were contractors or vendors in the recovery? How many historically underutilized businesses were contractors or vendors in the recovery? And what share of the dollars, that $1.2 billion, the way budget was, went to historically underutilized for North Carolina? Somebody's doing this work. How much of it is down for the benefit of our businesses and our community? And how many jobs and all of that, the economic impact of all of that stuff goes? I'll let you know. Next slide.
Well, I know one thing. A lot of money that was made in the disasters in North Carolina was outside people.
Right here. I-40 clearance, US 74 clearance, mudslide, 2018. These are the companies that got the contract. This one's headed for where? Dublin, Ireland, and this one is where? I'm in Florida. And I got a clue to this. I knew it already, but I really got a clue when I was on vacation earlier in the year. I had a little vacation spot in Florida, and there was something. I had a weekend refrigerator, so I called Home Advisor, and some guy came out, and they asked me where I was from. I said, from North Carolina. He said, oh, I'm just back from North Carolina because we've been doing all of the disaster work in North Carolina. You understand the disaster business, you got people who are in the disaster business. What do? They follow disaster. That's the business. That's their business model. They follow disaster. The question is there anything in this that can be done by locals? Can we grow some business? Can we create some jobs locally? I don't have anything against any of these or anything, but I just want you to understand what the landscape looks like.
I have a question. In this idea that you're doing here, was there consideration on the business that you're talking about, how they were impacted?
Let me get you. Because long and short is we don't know. Next slide. So I'm going to get me a business that can move the slack. So
Is it coming?
So, we've been, there's a lot of money there. Somebody's making this move. And the question is who? And to what extent does it break down to the very people that we care about?
Oh, but it kind of goes back to with what ACP kind of was telling people in the beginning, the stockholders and everything,
another one over
all
here?
this job opportunities for individuals in these communities. And the line was spread at that because they were bringing in very similar.
Should I do the other one?
So we've been in the business of tracking some of this stuff, and it's really, really hard. It's really hard. But if we never get this back up, there is a strategy, and there are people around the country who put together systems that enable them to track who's doing the work, how much they get of these contracts, how do they grow, and how many jobs do they create, and what even a return on investment.
Yeah, we can try that.
There's systems like that, and that's kind of what I wanted to share with you. It's I have one more data point I want to share with you. And then so this is my other data point. Post-Hurricane Matthew, the state received Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funding in the amount of $236 million. Okay. As of December 8, 2018, that's how much they had spent of that $236 million for what? 1%. Fast forward to March 2019, that's how much they had spent of that what? $37 million for what? 3%. And you got people living in what? Single room hotel with them in their car and the like. Not about money, is it? Not about money. And so we got to figure that one out. The money is there. And there are other states, South Carolina got money, they have spent 25 or 30% of the country. We had problems with we had procurement problems. We used the wrong procurement system. We had turnover problem in the organization, loss of memory, how to deal with PPP and all that kind of stuff. Folks push back and said, you can't do it. So the money that was actually spent, they had took advantage of it. You can't use it. The contractor that they selected, they don't qualify, so that's the point that was spent. You had to turn back and state ballot or something. I mean, so there's some opportunities here. Last slide on this, that's my data point. Oh, it worked. Ooh, Lord, Jesus. 200 miles an hour. What's that? NASCAR. So, and this is all chronicled in a report that the Program Evaluation Division of General Assembly just released in May 2019. And they point out in this report, since 2013, according to this report, that DEQ has been responsible for administering a majority of community development block grant funds, which are directed for economic development and infrastructure. Lots of economic development CDBG funds used to be focused on housing. They had moved away from that, and now it's about what? Economic development and infrastructure. The question is, who benefits from that? How many dollars have gone to women-owned businesses, historically underrepresented businesses, and all of that in this process? Here we go. That's our pathway to economic independence, economic inclusion, and all of that. That's awesome. And if it is perceived to be that way, how do we do it? Next slide. Have these CDBG funds been dispersed in a manner that is inclusive and equitable? Who's getting the money? What are they doing with it? And are the recipients committed to equity and inclusion? And it's all how you know that. And what has been the economic impact on it effectively? I think those are environmental justice issues. It's just the economic side of environmental justice that I personally don't think get enough. That's just my argument. Y'all feel free to push back. I'm 65. I'll push back. Next slide. So I think we have an opportunity to leverage environmental justice issues to promote inclusive and equitable development. I think we have an opportunity, as I said at the outset, to link this notion of environmental justice and economic inclusion. People of color, poor folks shouldn't be just bear risk. They ought to benefit from what? The upside, too. And I think you have to look at it as there's an upside. Somebody's making money doing things. Next slide. So some definitions for us, because, the question is, what do I mean when I'm talking about inclusive and equitable development and all of that? So when you talk about inclusive development, we're talking about development that ensures that all marginalized and excluded groups are stakeholders in development and redevelopment process. You have a hurricane that destroys the community, come on and got to redevelop. Who's doing that? What share of that goes to people who historically left out? Next. What is inclusive growth? If we're talking about promoting inclusive growth, what are we talking about? We're talking about growth that not only creates new economic opportunities, but also ensures equal access to opportunities created for all segments of society, particularly the poor. It focuses on increasing per capita income through economic growth, greater access to non-income aspects of well-being, enhanced by proactive policy making by the state and contributions from other actors. Put pressure on people to do the right thing, but at the same time, you got resources to do the right thing. Let's make sure we do the right thing and making sure that those resources are what? Allocated in an equitable and inclusive and equitable manner. So this notion of equitable development, how you know it when you see it? Equitable development unlocks the full potential of the local economy by dismantling barriers and expanding opportunities for low-income people and communities of color. Through accountable public action and investment, it grows quality jobs and it increases entrepreneurship, ownership, and wealth. The result is a stronger, more competitive community. This is one of the hottest topics out there today because we have lots of communities that are undergoing gentrification, driving lots of people out that they can't afford to live in these places. We have a school in Durham for vulnerable people. Last year I had 4 homeless people. They could not afford to live in the city. I all got master's degrees. Think about it. We haven't done anything wrong. They can't afford to live in the city. And so how do we think about our charge and the work that we're doing to say, we got to right the ship policy-wise and all of that stuff, but how do we make sure that our efforts to right the ship promote economic inclusion? Next. So the way people do this is through the notion of an inclusive supply chain management. It means that you have to facilitate supplier development and supplier diversity in contracting and procurement. Every one of those that are allocated to do something, what do? You issue an RFP for somebody to do the work. How do you make sure that contracting and procurement system is equitable, is inclusive? First of all, you have to understand supply chains. The next one. So what is a supply chain? What do I mean by supply chain? This is a network between a company and its suppliers to produce and distribute a specific product to final buyers. This network includes different activities, people, entities, information, and resources. The supply chain also represents the steps it takes to get the product and service from its original state to the customer. In disasters, there's a supply chain. For every stage of a disaster, including recovery, there's a supply chain. And you have to understand that supply chain to identify where there are opportunities to create jobs or to link businesses with opportunities to create jobs and the like. So the big thing when we talk about supply chains, next slide, thank you. The general consensus in business strategy is firms do not compete, but their supply chains compete. Firms do not compete, but their supply chains do. Best example, FedEx and UPS. They're fierce competitors in the marketplace. So the two companies don't compete. It's their supply chain. It's everything. The source of competition for them is their system of logistics, packaging, order fulfillment, warehousing, transportation management, and it includes ground, air, and ocean transportation, and their labor management system. All of that is part of their supply chain system. I've been doing business with Federal Express for 25 years, and in 25 years, I've had 2 packages go around. They guarantee 10 a.m. delivery or whatever time you want it, right? And in 25 years, 2 packages have gone around. And one of them was weather-related. It wasn't their fault. The second one, I got a text back from me saying, your package missed its plane in Memphis. No, it didn't. Well, packages are in and out of houses. Somebody screwed up. But think about it, ladies and gentlemen. That supply chain, how is it that those planes land at about 10 o'clock at night, and in 45 minutes, they turn around, every package is on every plane, and on your desk the next morning at 10 a.m. That means everything from when you put your material in a package, that package has got to be the right thing so it doesn't fall out and all of that. That's the package. Somebody's got to pick it up. Somebody's got to get it to the what? The local distribution center. It's got to be scanned. It's got to get on the right plane. And when that plane lands, you've got 45 minutes to turn around. You know what their labor management system is? You'll be surprised why FedEx pays their part-time workers great wages and benefits. Why? Because they can't have anybody calling you in 10:30. I got two. My baby. No. You got to be there to make sure what? That system works. And I dare you to tell me to find a UPS or a FedEx worker that you can make angry. You crazy mad about something, give that them, they look at you as the conduct. Why? Because getting the logistics was their customer centric. That's all part of the supply chain that ensures that if you send a package this afternoon, it's going to be on that desk tomorrow. And it's that whole supply chain that has to work. So UPS is not competing with FedEx. It's their supply chain there. Every system, all of you have supply chain. In any business, everybody has supply chain. Probably, people don't recognize it. And people don't know where the potential landmines are and the things that they're not paying attention to. I'm suggesting that this is the big thing that we need to be mindful of, and that moving forward, I think we can do a better job in the environmental justice business, in the disaster business, in the clean energy business. All of that, I think this works. Next. So this is what I did just as an example. This is an abbreviated supply chain to build a Beltline project in Durham. So somebody's got to do a feasibility study, public outreach. You do consultants, or you use your city staff. Who are those consultants? Are they diverse? Okay. Then you got to get to the engineering and design work. You need procurement, the architect, engineers, landscape engineers. How diverse is that pool of people you're drawing on? Or is it just folks you've always done business with because you went to college with? What's that? You get that work done, you got to do construction. Well, there are a whole set of activities there. How inclusive and equitable is your what? Reaching out for targets there. And then once you get the project completed, somebody's got to maintain it. What took us to a place today, those folks got to maintain that system so it doesn't work. If they take it that, well, that does not do that. You either don't have contract workers or you don't have employees. What do you got there? That's kind of a rough schema of a supply chain when you think about development projects and the like. And so the question becomes, in the business and the work that we're trying to do, how do we get a grasp on what those supply chains look like? Next slide. So we can begin to do this notion of economic inclusion as we try to solve environmental injustice problems. So this is not rocket science. So folks are doing it around the country. And so the question becomes, what does an inclusive supply chain system look like? First and foremost, whatever organization is rolling out a supply chain, commitment to it comes from the top. Whether it's the Secretary of BQ, the CEO of Company X, whatever it is, it comes from the top that says, we're going to be equitable and inclusive in the contracting and procurement dollars that we have under our stead. And if you got multiple departments, every department is going to have a goal in terms of how they spend their money and being equitable and inclusive. And this notion of supplier diversity is diffused throughout the organization through formal education and training programs. It's not willy-nilly. No. This is the part of our DNA. This is who we are. We value equitable and inclusive processes. Now, what I will tell you, when you look at the companies and organizations that are doing this well, yes, it's government mandated when you get government dollars, but increasingly people are moving from the government mandate to understanding that our landscape is changing dramatically, And so now they have business imperatives in there because it makes good business sense, because the market is changing, your workforce is changing. You need to be sensitive to these conditions because it gives competitive advantage. And to figure out when you're being inclusive and equitable, you do internal and external benchmarking to create your goals. I'm going to bet you 25% of the work that goes into this project, Hurricane Matthew, whatever it is, goes to what? Women, people of color, whatever, however you want to define it. How do you arrive at that 25%? Well, first of all, the first question you have to ask yourself is, when I look at my supply chain now, how diverse is it? How many suppliers do I have now that are diverse? And secondly, you look at your supply chain for areas where there is no diversity and say, these constitute opportunities to do diversity. It's called opportunity analysis. Look at supply chain. There are 5 areas in here. You got no representation whatsoever. Those are opportunities to grow businesses and development. And then, how do you measure your performance? What kinds of indicators are you going to use to say and demonstrate to the public that we're being inclusive and we're being equitable in solving environmental justice problems? And again, as I already indicated, you inculcating your system accountability by tying compensation to supply diversity goals. So within DEQ, you got how many divisions? Units? 14. Every one of them has budgets, right? How do they spend their money? What are their diversity goals? And how is it tied to your performance? You got to have those numbers. Next slide. And so if you look at the way in the state that we purchase goods and services, there's a statewide purchasing pool that there's some things that you buy, you go through this purchasing pool because it's what? Economies of scale. It just makes sense. You'll get the best deal there that you can get. Nobody ever asked the question, how diverse is this state purchasing pool? How equitable is it? And then there's some things that we have cooperative contract purchasing. I learned in some of the work that we're doing, like in one of the cities that we're working in, they buy all of their police cars from Dodge. That's a big corporation. That's not much diversity. But when you buy a police car, what do you have to do to it to make it a police car? Well, you got to detail it, right? Somebody's got to put the electronics in it. Somebody's got to paint it. Somebody got to put the screen in there because I ain't going to have Jeff knocking me in the head driving to jail. Is there an opportunity to connect people with those things? Although, that's a big company, they do it. You got to think about it. And then there are local vendors. Nobody ever asked the question, how diverse are those suppliers in and across the supply chain? If you're going to do, when you begin to ask these questions, then you can talk about equitable sourcing. Equitable sourcing. Now, the way this is done, next slide, is this is what a supply chain, inclusive supply chain management system looks like. It has 3 sets of tools. Okay? It has some, let's just assume that we're talking about knocking on government just for a minute, and it has some sets of tools. It has some demand side tools. There is a demand in state government for a whole range of what? Contractual services and procurement opportunities. That's the demand side. What does that look like? Well, if your procurement is going to be inclusive, maybe you ought to have a procurement calendar and a procurement forecast. But see, if I'm going to compete, I need to know what's coming down the pipe. I need to know it comes out of pocket. If it's later, if I find out later, everybody knows how much money is going to spend next. I need to know that so I can position myself to be able to take advantage of those. And when you issue these RFPs and RFQs, if you know who in your supply chain is already a diverse supplier, you can connect them with the opportunity. I'm not kidding. I'm telling you, here is something that you are what? Qualified to do. Right now what we do is we put the onus on the prime contractor to identify diverse suppliers, subcontractors. But that prime contractor, the only thing he has to do is demonstrate a good faith effort of trying to identify it. And sometimes a good faith effort means I send you an email. That's all it is. I've done myself. There's systems that matchmake people with opportunities. These bidding opportunities, they position folks for how to do that. These emergency letting procedures in disasters. We need people right away. We can find it. Well, it's a disaster that can happen. Oh, we can position people for this. You got to think about it as business. This is disaster business. And I'm sorry, debris removal. Last time I looked, if you got a truck and a chainsaw, you can do debris removal. And then if I put a grinder on the back of your truck, you're in big trouble. I'll do a real business thing. But we know how to do it. And then we know that we got to help manage these contracts and procure the pay. I guarantee people, small businesses, they need to be paid within 30 days. No, they need to be paid every week. Change the system so it works, so you can grow the business. And who are your partners to make all of this demand side stuff work? Now, you have demand to clean up whatever it is. Where are you going to get the supply from? Who are the people? Who are the businesses? Who are the businesses that's going to source? This should be one thing, I'm sorry. That you're going to register them, you got to certify them, you got to pre-qualify them, you got to educate them, you got to mentor them. Small business, just trying to get them started, trying to get them to grow. So on the supply side, you got to do all of this. Now, once you link supply and demand, then the fun begins. Because now you got rules and regulations and laws called compliance. So benchmarking, goal setting, tracking, helping companies with risk management. Things happen. Somebody dies in the firm, it may no longer be a minority firm after that, or somebody's trying to do the okie doke on you. They, assigned their great aunt who died 5 years ago, 51% ownership, all that kind of stuff. We know those kinds of things. You got to be able to manage all those risks. Then you need a set of key performance metrics that enable you to do what? Demonstrate the impact of what you're doing. And these are some of the metrics. And then you got to be able to communicate this plan internally and externally. When organizations build these inclusive supply chain management systems, sometimes they build them in-house. Sometimes they contract with turnkey solution providers, or they're a hybrid of these two. Next slide. How do you know? You have to look at this on your own, but here are all the kinds of indicators of performance that you can do and quantify. How many diverse suppliers do you have in your supply chain system? Tier 1, prime contractor, and then how are those places, organizations, communities that are serious about this? They insist that their prime contractors mimic the behavior that their supply chain is inclusive. That's tier 1 spending. spending money with you, you're a big prime contractor, and you got some subcontractors down here, I gotta make sure that they are inclusive too. So it's not only tier 1 count, it's tier 2 count, and then it's how much money am I spending with all of those. And given those firms that you are courting, you're trying to develop, how many deals did they win from you over time? Or how many did they lose? You know, what's the turnover? And if so, what's the source of the turnover? And how many firms are we growing to be million-dollar operations? Sometimes we're afraid to have big expectations for the firms. How many minority firms, women-owned firms are we making business, million-dollar business? I can the way they're doing the work. And then, how do we know what the economic impact is? The reason this is so important is we know that traditionally, historically underrepresented businesses and businesses operated by women and people of color are far more likely to hire people like this. So the impact of not just business, it's also the economic impact as well. Next slide. You don't have to do this on your own. There are turnkey systems out there that will do all of this. The unwritten system. In a meeting like this, one of these turnkey systems, I can walk in the room and tell you how much diversity spend we've had, who is benefited, and what the economic impact is in real time. Turnkey solution. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. These people in the business, they have state-of-the-art databases with lists of certified, historically underrepresented businesses. All you have to go link. They do the linking for you. They do all the work. They do all the work. Last slide. I know my time is up. So what are the value adds if you do this? You think about it. Well, number one is you transform a legacy problem, environmental injustice, into a strategic opportunity for economic growth, workforce development, and shared prosperity. Right now, there's no shared prosperity in all of this. Yeah. We create jobs and business opportunities for people living in the communities that are affected by environmental injustice in part a healthier, more viable, and sustainable community. You're looking a problem in the eye and say, we're going to solve a problem through a lens of economic. I don't think we do enough. We don't know. We don't have it. It's hard to figure it out right now. But we have a propitious opportunity to do more. That's all I have. I got one brain failure.
Dr. Johnson?
Yes.
Veronica here. Thank you. And I'll say Professor Johnson, because I know that was a class on basic logistics, speaking as a career logistician. I've got a question for you, though. Here in North Carolina, we don't really have minority set-asides. I think NCDOT does, but it's not mandated as it is for the federal government. Are you advocating that we use whatever influence or power we have on this board to try to get something like that, particularly in EJ communities? Because I agree with you. I think it almost has to be mandated. Again, there are, as you know, minority set-asides where only a certain type of company can bid on a certain type of contract in the federal government. That would be one way of attacking this.
No, absolutely. I think that, yeah, my answer to your question is yes. I think, Veronica, these turnkey solutions, it doesn't even have to be a set-aside. They're just a portfolio of qualified businesses, and prime contractors always say that they can't find qualified subcontractors, and I think that we are able to do a better job of identifying firms, and in areas where we don't have firms, we have an opportunity to grow firms. And to go back to the wonderful school that we visited today and talk to them and say, look, these disasters are not going anywhere. We're going to see this acceleration. Here's here are going to be a set of opportunities down the road. How do we begin to plant seeds among young people that these opportunities are going to be there, and you ought to have first mover advantage in creating businesses or getting training and skills in these areas to grow those businesses. As I said, I think the other thing is that most corporations that are doing this today are not doing it for compliance reasons. It just makes good business sense in a marketplace that is becoming far more diverse demographically for them. And so I think it's some combination of all those things, but I think we do have to, first of all, I think we have to expose people to this thinking, if you all agree. That's my thing. And then think strategically about how do we implement it.
I agree with you that obviously that diversity, once you kind of get used to it, you realize I should have been doing this all along. However, I think I have found resistance, and particularly in rural areas in our state, where, well, so-and-so always, this is the way we've always done it, or so-and-so's always done it this way, or he's the go-to person for, you used debris removal as an example. And so that's why, and I wrote here a couple of times in your chat, set-asides in North Carolina, set-asides in North Carolina. I think until we get people, I hate to say force them to realize, oh, I could have been doing this all along, that you're probably not going to get the embracing of diversity that we would all like to see here in the 21st century. That's just my 2 cents.
No question, Veronica, it's tough, but I'll say the same thing to you that my undergraduate professor said to me 40 years ago. Even giants were born small. You've got to start somewhere. And it's not like we need to reinvent the wheel. If you look at Atlanta, Georgia, if you look at Los Angeles, California, if you look at Prince George's County, Maryland, they do it every day. Mm-hmm. They've been very successful at this, so it's not like it's rocket science. I understand how difficult it is, but if let's just say we focus on the federal dollars that come into this state. You have to, by law, demonstrate some supply diversity in your chain. Let's start there.
And that's the example I would use, is that in the federal government, there are actual laws that say, they'll have a certain percentage. And I'm thinking that that might be our start. We might need to do some form of legislative, you will have some diversity in your chain, period, and to get them out of the mindset that this is the way we've always done it.
I think that's right. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm sorry.
Hey, Veronica. In Carver, about 20 years ago, we started to look at this very issue, and we have some ordinances that support localization. Where we can really make a difference in the bidding on projects, and where we don't get the diversity that we need, we will go out and ask folks to put in a bid.
Right.
But of course, we don't have home rule in North Carolina, so we're kind of limited. But there's an inextricable tie between localizing your economy and working with, expanding supply chain. They're totally connected.
Yeah.
And I'll get a copy.
Where that falls down, though, is how is it that people from all over the country can come in and do disaster cleanup, but we can't find local?
Well, and part of that is municipalities. What I'm saying is municipalities have some leeway to say the bidding process, we don't see the diversity in the bidding process, we're going to ensure it. And I'll share with Renee, I'll share what we did in Carver, but yeah, I mean, here's the other, let's flip it around. When let's say Hurricane Matthew, we saw lots of people coming in here from all over the country, and you wonder, well, why aren't the North Carolina, services being used? Or why? It may have been that they were immersed in the disaster themselves, but to me, we'd be like more people were coming in than people here were working.
That's the way we have to do it.
Right.
Historically work. I'm talking about we have to change the narrative. And it's not that there aren't people local who can do some of this work. And I'm not even against people coming from outside the state, but there are things like local hiring orders that say if you're going to come into this state, that a certain percentage of the jobs that you're going to do are going to go to local people. I mean, there's a whole equitable toolkit that can be used to grow businesses and create jobs in this process. And my only point is we need to begin to explore those things. I don't claim that Veronica corrected. No, I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do know that this works because it's working across the country and other places. I first saw it when I was on the faculty at UCLA in the 80s when we had, when we were hosting the 84 Olympics, and the entire airport had to be redeveloped for the 84 Olympics. The person in charge of redeveloping the airport was John Connor. I've never seen so many black entrepreneurs with contracts and, vendors in the airport and things, stuff that you didn't see other places. Because you got to be purposeful, you got to be intentional, it's got to be part of your DNA to make these things happen. And, I'm sorry, I've studied disasters for a long time, but I just see we bear the brunt of the disaster. We don't ever get much of the upside with the resources that come in. And I think that we ought to look at that. That's just my 2 cents. And then talk about any other questions? Oh, I suppose any other questions for that idiot that just presented? Yes, sir.
Besides working on this issue from a policy perspective, what we're doing on the local level is really making a concerted effort to bring the impacted community to the table as partners in the recovery process, because they're not present. This same system of disaster is a situation where it's done for the people and to the people, not with the people in those communities. So this same critical issue is one that would certainly be a strong interest to the actual. There's a new term called climate.
Yeah.
The same situation is occurring.
Yeah.
And there are some dollars that come from federal resources that go directly to local infrastructure. And they have to adhere to these rules, but nobody is checking it for long term. Nobody is, sort of paying attention to make sure that there's, if you say, I can't find it. In other words, you got to be in the business of developing and connecting, so I'm going to help you find it.
Right.
Yes.
Chair, I'll make a comment that your talk, one of the guest speakers that we invited in after the next speaker is actually going to speak about the kind of ordinances that are in place for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians related to tribal, it's called Indian Business Preference Law, Chapter 92 in our code that discusses how even when tribal dollars are spent, the way we talk about federal or state dollars, then there are certain standards and practices that must be adhered to.
That'd be helpful.
So I can introduce the next speaker. That's all right, Mr. Chair.
And one idiot for the day, that's enough.
So we have a brilliant young lady coming up. The next speaker is going to be Mrs. Sheena Lambert, and she is the director of our public health, director of public health within the Division of Public Health and Human Services. And I wanted to invite her today to speak about some of the projects that have taken place within our community that I think are applicable and relatable to this important work that we do, especially when we look at different, whether it's environmental impact or if it's more of a dietary or nutrition-related impact, and so she's going to come up and speak about the tribal health assessment that was completed in 2013 and the resulting tribal health improvement process that they just wrapped up a couple years ago and how that's impacting what we do here in Cherokee. So I'll introduce Mrs. Sheena Lambert.
Do I need to push this one again?
Yeah, I think you push that one. You sit.
Okay. Thank you, guys. I am honored to be here today. I appreciate Joey for inviting me and you guys as well. Again, my name is Sheena Lambert. I'm with Public Health Service Division. We're actually, PHHS is like county health department, but for the tribe. So we want to do it that way. Today I want to present on the tribal health assessment and the tribal health assessment plan. Yeah, this past few months. I'll wait till they get the PowerPoint. I can give out to be on the. Does everybody have pens? Okay. I don't have one copy.
Oh, I'll be back on this one. She's got too many things open. I don't know.
What is this? Oh.
I need to close on this so I can take this on.
Yeah.
Sheena, what we're going to do is we're going to, this laptop is serving that we're going to.
That's okay. I mean, I don't necessarily have to have it full, but I have my slides.
We'll make sure that we're showing colors as well.
I have to redo this thing.
I think every
No, we just have to know. I got it. Maybe if you want to grab one. Okay. I started on the other side. If you don't have, if there's not enough, let me know. I did some goodies today.
No, did we get this?
Did you bring samples?
So just let me know when you want that.
Okay, I'm going to stand over here. Okay, so you have a couple things in front of you, the PowerPoint slide if you want to follow along with the presentation. There's also a survey that I would like for you guys to take afterwards. To kind of, I'll go into more detail about that in a minute. And then I also brought a cookbook that our community members have put together from our Cherokee Strong classes. Feel free to look through those. And then also a calendar of physical activity events and nutrition opportunities if you want that as a reference point. So back to the tribal health assessment. I have a copy. I only have one copy. The reason I only have one copy is this 171 pages. So I'm going to go ahead and pass that around and take a look at that. As I see. So this is what tribal health assessment is. This is tribal health assessment. So how many of you guys have ever heard of community health assessment? Just around. Okay, good. Let's go to the next slide. So for those of you that may not know, a tribal health assessment is a document that identifies key health issues through data collection and analysis. It's a collaborative effort. We can do it without our partners here at the hospital, with the local school system, Cherokee Central Schools, the Division of Agriculture, of course, and Natural Resources, WC Health Network, USEC Tribal Epicenter, and of course,
It's a 5-year process. We do the assessment every 5 years, and then following that process, we do the travel health improvement process, which has, going back to your survey, we have categorized our priority that we select. So as you look or skim through the travel health assessment, you may want to know, well, where do we get our data from? Well, of course, we use Cherokee Hospital Authority. We also use comparative data with the 5 county regions, North Carolina state data, U.S. data, and of course the National Area Health Service. So we also had many community listening sessions throughout the community part of the process. They're a big piece of this health assessment. The community health survey in 2017, we had over 1,000 responses, which is a great response rate for our population. We have over 15,000 households or more, so that's a really great response rate. We use risk and resiliency survey. We also use data from that survey that's annually. We conducted an elder survey in 2017 as well, and we also had a lot of help from the Cherokee Water Fund and Air Quality. So these are the top. This is what we found in the 2018 fall find. These are the top 10 priority areas for health, and they are listed: substance use and related issues, violence and abuse, diabetes, hepatitis C, heart disease, stress, tobacco use, depression, food insecurity, and sexually transmitted infections. So there's a lot in 170 pages, right? So we had to do kind of put in the highlights for you, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So for substance use and related issues, in the 5 county service areas, the death rate from unintentional poisoning was almost double that of North Carolina state as a whole. Stimulant use has increased dramatically. It's almost double from our CPS process. Over 75% of community members said that drug or alcohol use was a top issue, and that was directly from over the 1,000 responses. Addiction, personal friend or family member was among the top negative impacts on one community. For violence abuse, reported domestic violence and sexual assault, AID, and decreased in the western 5 counties between 2012 and 2016, but overall rates were nearly triple compared to about 20% of Cherokee Central School middle and high school students get school because of personal safety concerns. 30 days. And again, that was straight from between October 2015 and May of 2016, there were 24 129 of elder neglect and 48 of elder exploitation.
Oh, no. There we go.
So for diabetes, in 2015, 25% of the DBI members have diabetes. This is a slight decline from about 27% in 2013. So we are making moves, making improvements for diabetes prevention. There's been a huge investment in that area. The diabetes death rate amongst AN, the 5 county service area was about 6 times higher than in the state overall. Between 2012 and 2016. And I think the biggest and the most significant is the third bullet point from our data collection was the gestational diabetes during pregnancy has increased by almost 4 times. in the five, among AIA and the 5 term services for 2017, 2016. Nearly 1 in 5 has tobacco. I'm sorry. For hepatitis C, the number of persons with hepatitis C in the UTI more than doubled between 2011 and 2015. The number decreased slightly in 2016, 2017. Nearly 6% of enrolled members that were seen at the hospital here were diagnosed with hepatitis C. More than half the persons in the UTI with Hep C are between the ages of 25 and 30. In the U.S., about 75% of people who have or have had it. So heart disease, looking at the cause of death, this is the leading cause for each diagnosed members. About 21% of all deaths contributed to heart disease. 2002. Over 40% of heart disease deaths in the UTI were in persons less than 65 years. Sorry. Stress. So this is the stress slide. This is another huge topic that was a priority of concern. Approximately 33% of community members said stress is one of the biggest concerns. As we know from research in the health realm, chronic stress can contribute to many physical health issues, including different births, obesity, tobacco use, and heart disease. There's actually a bigger correlation to stress and health outcomes than there are to being overweight and having diabetes. There's a huge correlation. So historical trauma and adverse childhood experiences can also magnify the physical and emotional effects of stress. How many of you have heard of So for tobacco use, AIAN has a high rate of commercial tobacco use compared to all other racial and ethnic groups in the U.S. as a whole. Nearly 33% of patients seen here at the hospital used commercial tobacco in 2016. State rates are 22%, and U.S. rates are 21% for 2016 if you wanted to have some kind of baseline comparison. UTI rates have increased slightly since 2007, while Northtown and U.S. rates have decreased. Over 25% of UTI pregnant women used commercial tobacco in 2016, and this rate has decreased over 40% in 2012. Approximately 25% of Jefferson School high school students currently use tobacco, and 50% are exposed to So for depression, between 2010 and 2014, suicide was the number 7 UTI cause of death. Males were twice as likely as females to commit suicide in that time period, but of course, we know depression is generally twice as common in females. In 2017, nearly 20% of community members reported that anxiety, depression, and mental and behavioral health were leading health concerns. In 2016, about 12% of elders have been diagnosed. There's so much stuff. I'm trying to fly through slides, so just bear with me, because I know you guys are questions. Disruption, of course, food insecurity is the disruption of food intake or eating patterns due to lack of money or other resources. AIAN are 25% more likely to be food insecure than the white population to that slide. Here, nearly 50% find it somewhat very difficult to get affordable fresh produce, and nearly 25% went hungry at least once in the past 2 years. 11% of elders
take fewer than 2 meals a day. And lastly, sexually transmitted infection and teen pregnancy. Some of the gonorrhea rates here have trended up between 2013 and 2016. Syphilis rates decreased in 2016. AIA and pregnancy rates in the 5-county region are double the total rate for all rates and ethnicities. And each applicants reported that, and again, this is the risk survey. 47% have been sexually active ever, and about half did not use condoms, and over 1/4 used no birth. So what are the next steps, right? So we did our data collection, we had our community sessions, we got all this feedback. So what are the next steps? Next slide. Well, the next step is why I'm here with you today to share the data with the community, any opportunities that Vicki and I have to go out and present community clubs, any community events, any our employee opportunities. We try to get this information out there so that they're aware of the top priority issues. We also want to get, of course, the community's thoughts and opinions about the data, and that goes back to the survey that I also noted out. So if you look here, if you could, and I know that many of you may not be enrolled members, but I still want to have, it's always good to have thoughts. I still want to, if you don't mind, fill this out, right? Pick what you think are the top 3 priority areas. Even if you're not an expert, you'd like to have the feedback from the community. And then for community members, we also ask them to explain why they selected those top 3. Was it something that they feel like they're going to return to have family? Is it something that they feel that we can provide more education on, or there's not enough programming for? So that's the opportunity to present suggestions. Lastly, we want to encourage community members, and we want to help and work with the CCI to be a part of the next step process. And the next step process starts in September. So there's close away from launching that, probably in October. So if you are interested in being part of that, you can always answer yes on the very last 2 bars at the bottom of the survey as well. If you want to read the whole SOF, it's also listed on Google EPI PHHS. It'll be on the very front page, and you can actually download it and print it off. Like I said, it's a rather large document for that before you print it. So, next slide. So in 2015 and 2017, we led the first step, and that's the second handout that's going around the table, the smaller document. So we had 3 priority areas, issues that we collected from that first initial SIP process, and those were diabetes, and depression. And so for each group created their own goals and objectives of what they could accomplish within 2-year period, 2015 and 2017. And that's the publication of what we accomplished towards those goals and objectives. So like I said, again, we're getting ready to launch from our 2018 SOF. We're getting ready to launch our second SIP process. It'll begin either September or October. We want to invite you to, to be a part of it, if you like. We invite you to do that. And if you are interested at all in being a part of that process, you want to learn more about it, or you work directly with the CCI, you can always email info@nc-cherokee.com, and going forward, you'll receive all of the emails for all of the meetings for the SIP process. Nothing. you notice in the back on the very back, there's a logo, Cherokee Choices. It's a diabetes prevention program within the tribe, and they conduct evidence-based nutritional classes series, and it's actually called Cherokee Strong, the class series is called. And the participants in this class come together to create this cookbook, and they've also some have actually volunteered their personal stories as well throughout their lifestyle changes, trying to lose weight, better health outcomes.
They work, because when we visited the school, talked about programs there. Do they work with the school at all?
They do.
Commissioner Sharon, for the full disclosure, she was actually my manager when I first came back in 2013. I worked for the Cherokee Choices. She was the manager of Cherokee Choices. I was on there in 2013. You got the great work done.
Thank
Thank you very much.
you. Enjoy also that DVD done from our Cherokee Kitchen series. That's kind of a treat.
Okay.
Those are some of the traditional meals that we all know how to prepare, and they're very healthy.
Sure.
So take a look at that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys for the opportunity. Thank you. Any extras that you could let me know, I'll pick them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, might be.
You said it might be.
Oh.
Mr. Chair, do I get my?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You don't have a conflict?
Okay. Thank you.
I'll get those. Yeah, if you're taking the survey, I'll be sure to collect those and submit them to Shane afterwards. Our next speaker is Ms. Terry Henry. She is a former councilwoman of Tribal Council and former chair of Tribal Council. And she is currently the director of our Tribal Employment Rights Office. And when I learned that Dr. Johnson was going to be discussing the topic that he presented on earlier, I thought, what not better person to come in to provide a complimentary discussion on what our own tribal purchasing, procurement policies and practices are that are codified by law. And so Ms. Henry is going to go over what's in our Tribal Code, Chapter 92, that dictates our Indian Business Preference Law, as well as an overview of the TARO program and how they accomplish their objectives.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you. Well, good afternoon and welcome to everyone to Cherokee. I'm sure that everybody is very welcome. We're very pleased to have you all here. Thank you, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this topic. As Joey mentioned, I'm the director of the TARO office, and I have to have a disclaimer. I've been doing this since December. I mean, I'll take that back since January. And so a lot of things are, I'm in a relatively steep learning curve, and so I'm going to be working on some paper here, and I do not have a PowerPoint. We are, so let me just start with, since last October, our TARO office had kind of, some of our staff, actually most of our staff had left, and so we've been in the process of rebuilding the office and its staff, and we're really trying to reboot the program and the work that it does and the offerings that it has. So we are actually in a developmental phase right now, and just trying to deal with all of the administrative pieces that need to be dealt with. So just bear with me. We haven't gotten this quick presentation that some of the other programs have, but we'll get there. So, how many of you guys are familiar with tribal employment rights laws? Tribal employment rights officers? Yeah, okay, good. Where are you from? Lumpy? Okay. Well, welcome to Cherokee. So, in the 1970s, in the late 1970s, many in the tribe passed these tribal employment rights laws or ordinances. And they require that all employers that are engaged in operating a business on reservations give preference to qualified Indians. in all aspects of employment, contracting, subcontracting, and other business activities. So these TARO offices were initially established and empowered to monitor and enforce the requirements of the tribe's employment rights ordinances. And the primary goals of these TARO ordinances were to address discrimination and other historical barriers that many Indian people face when seeking employment on or near reservation, and to help resolve patterns of poverty, unemployment, and underemployment on reservations, and to ensure that Indian people receive their rightful entitlements under both federal and tribal Indian preference employment laws. That's kind of a mouthful. There's a lot of legal pieces that underpin all of that. And so today, more than 300 American Indian and Alaska Native tribes are covered under TARO laws, their own ordinances. So just to kind of step back just a little bit further, just kind of to go to the underpinnings, Indian tribes as sovereigns have the inherent authority to regulate and control the employment practices of employers conducting business on their tribal land. And most people, I kind of use tribal lands, reservations interchangeably, but usually when I'm here in Cherokee, I see it in the context of tribal lands. This enables tribal governments to require that all contractors operating on this boundary provide Indian preference in employment, contracting, and subcontracting. As individuals, American Indians and Alaska Native have the unique and special employment rights. They have the right of preference of employment in tribal and several critical federal laws. Also, as citizens of the United States, like all Americans, tribal people are protected by all the anti-discrimination-related laws adopted by Congress. Additionally, as minorities and members of a protected class, Indian peoples are covered under affirmative action for employment purposes. And this set of employment rights provides Indian people with more protection than all other Americans and entitles them to our share of jobs and business opportunities on or near our tribal boundaries, tribal lands, and reservations. Our purpose at TARO is we're the administrative authority, if you will, of those laws. And our purpose is to administer and enforce tribal Indian preference laws that ensures that American Indian and Alaska Native people gain their rightful share to employment, training, contracting, subcontracting, and business opportunities on or near tribal land. These ordinances are typically enacted to address the deplorable rate of poverty, unemployment, and underemployment that exists among Native people, to eliminate discriminatory and other historical barriers tribal members face while seeking employment and business opportunities on or near reservations, to ensure that tribal members receive their rights, entitlements, and as intended and required under the tribal and federal Indian preference employment law, and to maximize tribal employment and all employment and business opportunities on or near reservations. So the legal basis for the TARO offices is the inherent right and sovereignty of the tribe itself. Typically, the core characteristics of TARO programs can provide you with some insights as to why law enforcement exists. So TARO is an act of true self-determination. The decision to enact a tribal employment law is the tribe essentially saying that we are taking ownership and we are going to manage and regulate the work that happens on these boundaries, and this is what happens internally. TARO programs are action-oriented. We are really a no-nonsense organization. We follow the law, we stay true to the law, we implement that law as it is written. We're hands-on, we're results-oriented. We're not trying to perpetuate fights among people. We actually, whenever we receive a complaint, our first line by law is to try to resolve it without having to go through this big administrative process. And then we are systematically structured programs, and they include our legal framework, our administrative structure, and our synergistic partnering. So our legal framework, as I talked about, with all the federal laws and all the tribal laws, and then our administrative structure is based with the intent of actually coming to some solutions, finding solutions. And then the synergistic partnering, where we, because of the way we function, we're able to actually assist. Like if somebody comes to us with a problem, we're able to say, okay, let's find some solutions to the problem so that we can try to avoid having conflict. And so that's just some kind of little top line discussion about TARO. Here at Cherokee and in most places in the country, there are two primary functions of TARO. One is the compliance with the law, and that's a particular set of procedures, like administrative procedures within the TARO function. And then the other piece is employment and training. So we have a job bank, or a skills bank, if you will, and we essentially have people who come in. We kind of function like an Employment Security Commission. We function like that, but we're not part of that structure. And so people come in. So Joe was looking for a job. He might come into the TARO office and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. And we say, okay, we know this job at the casino, job at the hospital. There might be a job down in Cherokee County or something going on. What kind of skills do you have? What kind of interests do you have? And what is interested in doing? And we would essentially connect that individual with the employer. And that's the synergy piece, at one aspect of it. And so, and that's literally what we do all day long, is try to connect people who are looking for jobs with jobs. And so the compliance part of it is essentially where we have two kind of functions with compliance. One is, let's say Joey was hired and something happened on the job, and he might have a complaint, or something might not have felt he got treated fairly by the employer, or the employer might have an issue with him. They would come to us, and we would sit down and try to mediate that thing out. Okay? And then the other aspect of compliance is we also certify TARO vendors, and that's really one of our key pieces that goes back to our Tribal Care Authority. When we are certifying vendors or businesses to be TARO vendors, that means that they get first preference in contracting. So, for instance, if you have a company that's TARO certified, if there's 3 people, if there's 2 TARO vendors in that category for construction, there might be 2 people, like they would let the RFPs out, and then those individuals would bid on all or parts of those contract opportunities, and then they would be part of the process. The TARO vendors get first priority, so if the priority comes down between 2 TARO vendors, or comes between a TARO vendor and a non-TARO vendor, if that TARO vendor is within around a certain percentage, then they're going to wind up being the contract. And it doesn't have to be like, this isn't a race to the bottom as far as TARO vendors go. They don't have to price themselves out of business, but they can be like 5% over, and even if that bid is lower, they can be 5% over that bid. And so, because we're really trying to encourage employment of individuals, we're promoting businesses of Indian businesses, Indian owned and operated businesses. And so there are several functions that we're trying to hit all of these touchstones all at the same time. The employment piece of it, one of the things when all of the staff kind of declined over the last several months, and what we've been doing in developing that element of our office has been to create an outreach program, as well as to find skills and training opportunities. So, for instance, one of our goals is actually to build a vocational training school where we can actually have people who, if they were interested in doing any of the labor work with construction, carpenters, plumbers, concrete, anything like that, we would actually have a place where we could actually help people get the skills to do those things. And so I visited one of those training center in Washington State at the Tulalip tribe, And one of the things I thought was really neat is that they're building tiny homes to address the homelessness in their community. So there's several, there's different ways that you can work things if you're just creative about how to actually, you've got somebody building a home, they're learning the skills of carpentry, and maybe learning the skills of plumbing and other areas, mechanical stuff, but then you're also having a product that could actually be used by someone else who needs something in the community. So that skills piece is something that we're really working on. The other piece of it is not everybody is about labor, and not everybody is about a 2-year, 4-year, or post-graduate degree. So those individuals who may just want to have a certificate in something, we are interested in offering and have worked to put together opportunities for people to go to grant writing classes, to notary classes, and to paralegal classes. And we have we're working with Duke University on their online program for their paralegal classes. And we're paying for that. So the tribe has an education department and program that pays for the 2, 4, and post years of education. Para program is paid for people who want to attend and get these certificates. And so we just feel like this is another opportunity to help our Indian people be employable and be qualified that qualifies Indian applicants. The one thing that the last cornerstone to our program, sometimes people talk about a table with 4 legs. Well, our table has 3 legs. And so our third part of our third component is the Mothertown Healing Program. And the Mothertown Healing Program is actually a program that was developed about 2 years ago that is designed to assist people who are recovering from substance abuse to be able to become functional adults in society. And so that program, essentially, we partner with all of our medical, our Amalanishi program, our mental health program, the hospital here, and any other kind of programs that are available to people to receive who are going through substance abuse recovery. They're required to go to their classes every day. They're required to follow all of that programming. And what the other thing that we do is we pay for them to do that. And they work 4 days a week, and essentially we're paying them a stipend, and they're showing up and they're going through their program, and they're subject to drug testing and those kinds of things, and they're able to get any of the certificates that we offer. They feel like they're ready for take advantage of that. So that program has a 75% success rate, meaning that 75% of the people who come out of that program, and they're in this for this is a long-term program. This isn't something that's like, this is a long-term program. We want to make sure that our Indian people are ready to actually come back to society and not ostracism or any kind of treatment in a different kind of way. So, any questions?
So in big projects like the casino, where you are dealing with big prime contracts, do you all impose any rules on them about their suppliers and their employees?
The employees, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the contractors are required to have we require them to have at least 30% Indian employment. Yeah. And even our casino is required to have 30% Indian employment because it's technically a managed contract.
But nothing for the prime contract suppliers.
The suppliers,
The tier 2.
to be honest with you, I mean, we don't have, for that volume, the volume of things that they would require on a job like that, we don't have a vendor that could actually do that. Our vendors haven't developed to that.
Could there be, they don't have to be local, but could there be vendors in other Indian tribes around?
If they're a tarot, yes.
But you don't impose that. criteria?
We don't because we're just focused on trying to get everything put together.
One last question. Do you require your employees or the people you're trying to collect to check the box?
They have to show us their enrollment card. That is not,
Check the,
which box? Any box?
no.
Criminal.
They're right.
Or the check, you have to say that I have a record for, it's called check the
Oh.
box.
Oh, there's a different box. For us, that box is, are you in American Indian, Alaska Native, yeah. So, as a general rule, we haven't asked it's not on our intake form for the participants, of the job bank, but it is on the Motortown program, and quite honestly, we know there's going to be a record there, and that's not a
And a lot of people are ready to start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we already know that we already know who the folks are, we already know, so we're just really glad that they showed up, and come on in, let us help you. Because the other thing, this is just something minor, one of the things that we can help with is if they have, let's say they don't have a driver's license, they got revoked, if it's something that's not major, we can possibly help them with getting that unrevoked, because driving to a job, getting there is actually a part of employment. So we're willing to help in that regard.
Other committees, questions? Veronica? Questions?
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Okay. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
We have a 10-minute break. So, could you just come back at 3:05? And then we have 20 minutes for the breakout sessions. So how do you want to handle those?
We don't have many
Need to
people,
break out.
so I would just need to say here, or if you have any kind of place out in the hallway, is that okay? And Veronica, I'll carry you wherever.
Thank you. I'll get a bit of a tour.
I'm breaking out with myself.
Breakout session, and then we'll come back together. I'll come going at like around probably 3:30, so we can be on time for our public comment at 4 o'clock.
How do you like to?
We're out of breakout sessions.
We don't know yet.
Oh, okay, we come back.
We ain't got much to break out. We were saying, we'll figure it out now. Okay, if we can reconvene, thank you all. Meeting, from the bed, they told us to be a little quiet, please, thank you. DEQ has asked us for advice on a series of issues, and James is going to kick us off. Thank you, James.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. And especially thank you to Ms. Donna Chambers and community members who have assisted the Cumulative Impact Committee in the last month or so on our responses to the questions that you have posed to our committee. I have a few documents I'm going to pull up in the time I'm allotted to help articulate exactly what the committee is doing and where we're hoping for the committee to go and looking to do so in the near future. So, does it matter which one I pull first? First. This one. This one. This one. And then that person. Okay. You can do whatever you need to do. So this is a document. This is not a presentation, but I just want everyone to be able to see it so that when you get it in your inbox, I have already gone through it. But essentially, DEQ asked our committee 2 questions, and I will scroll down to the page where the questions are. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So question 1. What is the committee on cumulative impact working definition of cumulative impact? So jumping down to you'll see we have cumulative impact and then the definition that we've chosen. Cumulative impacts are the effects of an action, whether federal, state, local, or private, that are added to or interact with other effects in a particular place or within a particular time. So cumulative impact results in the compounding of the effects of all actions over time. We as a committee will work to further educate this board on exactly what that means. And we also added an additional definition under cumulative risk that is just a further explanation of the cumulative issue as a whole that we're hoping the department will begin to dig deeper on as they're doing the work of the department. So question 2 was how can DEQ better engage the community on cumulative impact? In summary, our explanation really points to partnership, and I think that's what we've discovered as a committee over this time that we've been on the board, is that directly communicating with communities that are impacted by environmental injustices is the most efficient way to really get at solutions that communities find useful. And it's a mutually beneficial process in creating partnerships and maintaining partnerships. And so as you'll see, this should be in your inbox soon. We're really emphasizing the need for DEQ to prioritize partnerships, and the Committee on Cumulative Impact is committing to working with DEQ to really implement this idea, have solid examples. We've given examples of where DEQ has successfully engaged in partnerships with communities. We've given an example of how the mapping tool that DEQ created has been an excellent way for DEQ staff to visit and have a reason to go to impacted communities. And so all of that is articulated here. But I did want to pull out a few state-based examples of authority that we feel gives DEQ the ability to at least consider cumulative and other environmental justice considerations in their decision-making. It might not be able to take their decision-making, but it's definitely something that we're hoping to judge more of in terms of their work. So we have a general statute, this is for solid waste, where DEQ is actually required to consider cumulative impact. In our state constitution, equal protection under the law, we think also assists DEQ in moving forward and making those types of analyses. And then we have something way back from almost 20 years ago, North Carolina Junior Environmental Equity Initiative. That's actually a policy initiative that was put forward that a lot of folks don't even know about, but it actually calls, DEQ promised as a goal to address environmental equity issues, citing Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, promote greater use of analysis of demographics, and to identify communities that may be disproportionately impacted by sources of pollution, and then developing guidelines for assessing cumulative effects of permitted facilities. So that is just an example of a commitment DEQ made 20 years ago that I think is being re-realized now. And our committee is committed to assisting DEQ in that. So I'm sorry, I'm probably out of time, but could you pull up the document? Yeah. So with that in mind, our committee has been working closely in the recent past with Donna Chavis and other community advocates out of Robeson County. As you'll remember, a lot of folks came to our last meeting in Charlotte to talk to us about a proposed LNG facility, and they were asking that we support their act and do in whatever capacity they can to stop that LNG facility for many reasons, but in particular the fact that that is adding to the cumulative impact of environmental injustices in Robeson County. And so we're working with Donna and others from Robeson to understand exactly how cumulative impacts impact their county. They graciously spent a lot of time responding to our ask, and in summary, you'll see this document, which I believe I forwarded to the board earlier today, where they actually find cumulative impact in their own experience. And so I found it to be extremely helpful just for myself. I know the rest of the committee has as well. And they've actually given examples of each way they feel Robeson County has been impacted by environmental injustices, and examples to that point of how cumulative impacts are really a reality in Robeson County. So I'm sure this will be available to the public record, but it's also been directly sent to board members this morning, so you can just take a further look at that. And with that, I'll let everyone know that Robeson County and Donna Chavis and other advocacy communities have graciously invited us to come down and talk to them and talk more about exactly what cumulative impacts are to them and other terms like this written, disproportion, all those other cumulative environmental terms. So much, that's what the cumulative impacts may be doing. I'll take any questions after the meeting.
Thanks very much.
I had a question on, we were discussing part of the technical challenge that you experienced last year with this board and getting familiarized with the spaces. How has your subcommittee communicated predominantly to receive responses during these kind of documents?
Yeah, it is tricky because understanding one channel and all of that. So mostly it's been one-on-one conversations. So not we actually had to sit on a call as a whole committee. Individually, one person at a time, and the same time the votes and counting. So it's more information on how to more effectively have these about this for the interim, but that's how
Yes, sir. Joey and Danielle and I were just discussing during the breakout session the fact that, as Joey mentioned, the communication problem has been an issue, as has just our committee, which has grown smaller, as you know, with folks having some personal things going on in their lives that they were unable to fully participate. But I will say that on question number one, climate justice and how we can advise DEQ to include policies that ensure equity and justice that are properly addressed. It's something similar to what Jamie has masterfully done in her very long paper, which I can tell you I don't have right now. It all goes back to the Solid Waste Management Act of 2007, which I know some of the DEQ folks in the room are familiar with. In that act, there was actually a mandate in the permitting process for DEQ to consider whether or not the impact was going to be on a environmental justice community, on a community that had been previously impacted adversely. And I think we're making progress by our DEQ mapping tool, where we can easily identify that. Even DEQ now can go in and easily identify that. But I think, as I said it during one of the first meetings we had, we need to get to a point where, and perhaps it can be a rule, perhaps it can be a regulation, but I would really like to see it as a law, and that's a pipe dream right now, but where every single permit in a state takes into account whether it is having an adverse impact on a community that has been previously disadvantaged and is suffering from being an environmental justice community. We have to give DEQ permitters some teeth to deny permits. Which kind of leads me to the second one about economic redevelopment and economic development. One of the leading cries of industry whenever we talk about permits and restrictions is that it's going to adversely impact economic development and jobs and growth, and companies won't come to North Carolina, et cetera. And I direct you to something else that happened early on in our existence, the argument about methyl bromides permits in southeastern North Carolina. Well, that is still an ongoing question, but thanks to the work of DEQ, we're getting closer to actually getting a rule put into place with the Environmental Management Commission. And I applaud them, although it's taken a year. That's just the way the system works with administrative law. I applaud the way that the system has worked. They took a problem on methyl bromide. DEQ staff went back and did their homework, looked to see what other countries did, what other states had done, and came up with a fairly decent proposal, and then gave it to their scientific community and said, okay, you guys look at this and give us a recommendation. The science panel came back with a recommendation, and now they've taken the homework that the DEQ staff did, the science panel's recommendation, and have come up with a proposed rule. They put that out to public comment. Now the public comment is based not just on anecdotal evidence or emotion, but on actual science and actual prior best practices elsewhere in the country. That's perfect, in a perfect world. And the argument that industry has made at some of these public comments, and I know Jamie and others are familiar with them, is that, well, see, it's going to take away jobs. Well, at the public comment period in Wilmington, I turned to the EMC commission member and said, you know what, the Malik brothers here in southeastern North Carolina debunked that, because they went out and bought a debarking machine. They are still debarking logs. They are still putting them in containers and shipping them to parts unknown. They have not lost a single job to the best of my knowledge. They did not pack up their stuff and go home when they were told they couldn't fumigate all of the logs. They're still making money, because that's what they do. They're in the business to make money as a profit company, and their neighbor's air is cleaner and safer. Look, so we didn't lose any jobs, and we protected the environment. That's what we should be doing. This is not an either or. I truly believe you can have safe air and safe water and still grow economically. We have to help some people and some companies along, because in the capitalist world, they want to make all the money they can. Well, you're not going to make as much profit as you want, but you can still make profit and do the right thing. So I'm going to say that we need to push, the governor needs to push, where we have across the board policies in place in the permitting process for clean air and clean water that causes DEQ staff, it triggers that if someone asks for a permit in an area that's been designated environmental justice community, it triggers additional homework. It triggers the staff going back and seeing how this particularly vulnerable community has been, to use the word, preyed upon in the past, and what we can do to make it safer. Is there some sort of control technology that won't put this company out of business but will protect our neighbors? If so, why hasn't it been put onto the permit? Should it be put onto the permit? Should we require it? We need to give these guys, the DEQ staffers, some teeth. And I think that sums up what we talked about.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Randy?
Okay, well, on May 22nd meeting in Charlotte, I shared the materials from the Climate Change Industry West Resilience Committee, and we had laid out an outline and made some recommendations to our advisory board as well as to staff. And the three of us, Dom and Susan Jakes and myself, were very comfortable with what we had, but we didn't get any feedback, or at least we didn't know if there was a mechanism by which we were supposed to get feedback, not only from folks here, because we did get that feedback at the meeting in Charlotte, but from DBQ on how to proceed forward. So I was just talking with Renee because, you know, in order for us to move forward, and there are only three of us, so, you know, I have to be a voice of vision as we saw it. We want to make the following recommendations, which is sharing the material that we had last time with the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency. Because coordinating with that office is going to be important to be able to look this over and have more than one voice from one area on the same page. And so I think step one, the way Renee and I kind of look at this is to reach out and connect with the folks at the Office of Recovery and Resilience and have a discussion about what kinds of things we have here that already fit into some planning they have. That's step one. Step two is to, well, actually, step one is to have DQ tell us to do that. And step two is to actually reach out and make that connection. Step three is to identify those resources that Response to Resiliency Office have that work into this plan. Step four is to actually coordinate with community planning. And step five is to work with the Resiliency and Risk Management Plan, the Executive Order 80 team on community rollout, so that the surveying of communities, which we refer to, is something that we can maybe actually have that team do as part of this program. So I think it's a more coordinative short-range plan for this particular group. But I think our advisory board, from what I understand, just procedurally, we would need to agree that this plan should be, that DEQ should give us approval to make these steps. I think that has to be something we decided.
I have prepared documents from about every group. William is not here, but we have a prepared document. Make a friendly recommendation to see if this works for everybody. Let me suggest, I think that we collect those written documents, package them, and send them to everybody, and with a tight time frame, like 15 minutes a week, but to everybody to give feedback on them, and then Marion and I will forward that package to Renee and her group, because we will have committed all of our responses. I know we have one, we met, and we addressed, I'm not here today. And in the interest of time for public comment, if that is okay with you all, send those documents in. We will package them, all of them, and send them back out for your feedback, any recommendations, and then we'll forward. Back? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would be in agreement with that, but I'd also like to, as it relates to that matter, bring up the internal operating procedure or are they still in draft form? Or
No. That's not part of this.
Okay.
That's a separate issue. And what I'm going to suggest is that we move to the public comment period, and at the end of the meeting, we handle that document. I want to be respectful of people who came. We said 4 o'clock. And they are already going to hold us. We have 3 minutes. I think that's about $3 million. I would like to shift to the comment period and be respectful of their time and be respectful of us. At the end of the comment, we'll come back to that issue. Wrap up. Does that work?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you for- 3 minutes, that's standard. We have a podium over there.
You in front of everybody, wait.
Reverend Mike Ledger is our first speaker. And the North Carolina Spinal Solutions for Thank you so much. That's it.
I think I went over my 3 minutes a little bit at the last session, so I'm going to try to limit it to that.
We need to get some of our $1 million back anyway.
But it's good to be with y'all again, and I'm Reverend Mac Ledgerton. I wear many hats. I'm consulting with nonprofits now, and empathize with all those in nonprofit and public sectors who are seeking to manage our government agencies and our nonprofits in this particular time in our history of our nation. I am acting interim executive director at the North Carolina Climate Solutions Coalition. I also founded our Robinson County Affordable Housing Coalition to really address this issue of disaster and the lack of and loss of affordable housing. I'm also a UCC minister, and we've started a new Southeast North Carolina Climate Justice and Disaster Recovery Project. It's really focused on involving impacted communities in the recovery process. And if church groups are going to come into our county to help with the process, we're asking them to also. We will supply a workshop and training for them on climate justice. So they're not just coming in to help us, but also being more equipped so when they go back home, they can also assist in remediating some of the causes. So I'm here basically to invite all of y'all, and I hope, Jamie, I'm going to put a little promotion in for your subcommittee, to consider attending the site visit when Jamie's subcommittee comes to Robinson County. We did spend, I don't know how many hours preparing this 2-page report for Jamie's subcommittee. We have academics involved, practitioners involved. There's 4 members of the Lumbee tribe that have been involved in developing that. And we have some of our statewide partners who have been engaged with us. The first page Jamie showed you, so just sort of to urge you in coming, I want to say a little more about Robinson County and then sit down. But Jamie and Donna's coordinating it locally with the subcommittee, and we would hope that the whole advisory board would consider coming. Donna and I are very experienced for 40 years in hosting site visits and groups. Our last major one was with the Poor People's Campaign, and instead of them coming in and making a big noise in our county, we took them on a private tour, all-day tour, and their eyes were really opened, and seeing is believing. So not just the natural gas infrastructure that we've addressed so well, particularly in this recent petition to DEQ, but also this big issue of the chicken and poultry industry and totally unregulated industry, deforestation, those subjects that were on the first page. I just want to say a little more in closing about our county that you may not know. Jeff, you may know a little bit, and folks here at the Cherokee Nation. But because of the large Native American population there, majority Lumbee, our county is the most racially diverse rural county in the entire United States. After New York, Chicago, and LA, it is the most racially diverse place you can go in this country. Unfortunately, it's also one of the poorest and most violent. And we are last of 100 counties in our health status. So we're the most unhealthy place to live in the state, unfortunately. So when we talk about cumulative impact, we talk about all of these environmental and human factors that combine to really make the challenges of improving the quality of life in our community very difficult. And we faced a lot of environmental threats in the 80s in toxic waste and low-level radioactive waste industries that really wanted to move in prior to the new regulations that they knew were coming. We feel today that's the same issue with the fossil fuel industry. They're making every effort to get in as much infrastructure as possible before they know, and they're coming quicker than they even thought, the new regulations that are making it economically and environmentally opportunity to shift as soon as possible away from our fossil fuels. In 2017, Robinson County was ranked last in 100 counties, and also under the USDA, we are one of the 10 counties of persistent poverty in the state, all of which are in the eastern part of the state. Y'all know about poverty in Appalachia, but eastern North Carolina, according to research, is actually now poorer than Mississippi. So if you take I-95 and created the 51st state in the nation, it would be the poorest. Also, in terms of environment, we are like the Amazon of Brazil. People know what the underdevelopment and harmful development is happening in the Amazon. Eastern North Carolina, Jeff, with our wetlands, our rivers, our coastal plains, we are like that, but we don't treat it like that as a state. And Virginia lost Smithfield. Virginia kicked Smithfield out, and where did they come? Eastern North Carolina, with the support of our policymakers. Same thing is now happening with the fossil fuel industry. Same thing is now happening with chickens. So we're getting more and more underdevelopment, as the academics call it. The more strident environmental groups would call it dirty development. But we really need y'all to come and visit us and visit other communities like you're doing with the communities. And so we can be in dialogue with you and really support our Department of Environmental Quality in its important work. And I'll quit preaching and sit down.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You may have a couple questions.
Sure, I have a question.
Yes.
Reverend Mack, when, I guess in coordination with Jamie, what is the date y'all have set, or have you set a date?
There's no date, so the idea was to just open it up to everybody and we can come up with a date that works. Maybe we can send out, we can hear from the community about what works for them, and then maybe we can have a beautiful.
Well, we'll put down anything we're doing. And it doesn't have to be a big, it can be a really quiet, however you would like it. We're very experienced in this. We work with a lot of national organizations, not just in the environmental field, but particularly in the social justice field over these 40 years. And again, you really need to see it, feel it.
I would say personally, I appreciate the opportunity and the invitation to come down to look at some of the other tribes of North Carolina. One of the things I was telling the board this morning about being in this part of North Carolina, and we're fortunate to be in our homelands here in Western North Carolina, is that we don't have the same environmental justice issues that the rest of the state experiences. I mean, our headwaters are pristine and protected and coming out of a national park. You don't see a lot of industry development here within Cherokee, but certainly in different parts of Western North Carolina.
paying attention to these issues that we're raising that are both personally important to us, economically important to the state, and as a climate activist, extremely important because somehow we've got to bring the climate under control so that the earth will remain livable for future generations. I am here today to talk about one particular very important petition which the Friends of the Earth and the North Carolina Climate Solutions Project, which is Donna and Mac and others have put together, which I think some of you have seen. I've got notes all over mine, but I think you've seen it. I think it's been sent to you. It's a very detailed analysis of why the 401 water quality permit, which is the only state permit which has been given to the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the only one that was needed for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline to be built, was given by Department of Environmental Quality a year and a half ago in January of 2018. Why that permit can and should and must be revoked. And there are many reasons for this that are spelled out in significant detail here, and I don't have time to go into all of them here this afternoon. What I do want to stress is, one, the climate situation right now is an emergency. You know, we have a finite period of time, a finite window to solve this problem. So we must act fast. This petition outlines, some people say, well, we've got to let the legislators, you were saying, let's get some legislative remedies for this. Given the facts of the matter of how our politics is polarized and so on, which we all know about, we probably don't have time for that. What we do have, though, is statutes, both federal statutes and state legislation already on the books, which not only gives Department of Environmental Quality the statutory authority to revoke this 401 water quality permit, but in fact, and it's argued persuasively in my mind here, I'm not an attorney, so, but it's argued persuasively in here that it must revoke it, that it is statutorily required to revoke the 401 water quality permit. Now, certainly there'll be argument about that, and certainly the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, Duke, and Dominion are going to argue that case. One other thing that I think I want to add on this is to stress that EO80, which we all know about, the Governor's Clean Energy Plan, if the Governor and the Department of Environmental Quality are serious about EO80 and about implementing this reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in North Carolina, if they are truly serious about that, which I believe they are, EO80 and the Clean Energy Plan is an amazing and very complicated document, but it points and it's really trying to address what the state needs to do in order to bring climate change under control. I applaud the Governor, I applaud DEQ, I applaud all the people who have been involved in that process. However, the EO80, from my reading of it, does not mention the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, does not mention the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And if the Atlantic Coast Pipeline alone is built, let alone the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which isn't quite so big, but which is a really big deal, if they are built, they will produce approximately 4 to 5 times as much greenhouse gases as EO80 proposes to cut back on. So in other words, if EO80 is serious, the pipeline has no place in North Carolina's future. So EO80 is another ground to stand on in it doesn't provide legislative, I don't think it provides statutory authority for the permit to revoke, but it certainly provides a lot of moral, ethical, and political ground for DEQ to stand on and the Governor to stand on if they would choose to really challenge this project, which can be so damaging to North Carolina. So I urge this committee to read this document. The document goes into significant detail to add to what Mac was saying about cumulative impacts in Robeson County, about the impacts of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the resulting activities in Robeson County, which will occur if the pipeline is built, because the gas will be used in various ways. It outlines 9 significant impacts upon the county that the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the other infrastructure which will go on it, the impacts that it will have on the people, the climate, the ecology, and so on of Robeson County. So this is, in my mind, a very compelling document. I urge you all to look at it carefully and to have conversations with Commissioner Reagan. This has also been, Secretary Reagan, this has also been submitted to the Attorney General and to the Governor. So it's a great opportunity to start a conversation and to really start arguing for this. One of the things I've been thinking a lot as a climate activist lately is we need to be telling the truth about the climate. I know up until now I have because I don't want to scare people too much, because a lot of the information we're getting, and it's in the news daily, is really, really scary. And so I've been careful not to try to scare people too much. But I've begun to think I need to talk about the emergency. I need to talk about the fact that if we don't deal with this in the next few years, the climate is going to be doomed. And believe it or not, I have great-grandchildren. My great-grandchildren may be doomed. So I really, for personal reasons as well as all these other things, I urge you to pay attention to this. Thank you very much. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Any questions? Thank you.
Trying to jump line along.
Yeah, you didn't leave that shoebox running under my feet.
I appreciate the grace of not going second, and I'm going to cut my presentation because much of it in the beginning was really kudos to the board, and there's some in the end. So I just won't give you as many kudos as I was going planning today. I don't love it. But I do want to say that I was encouraged by much of before I do that, I want to thank Cherokee Nation for your hospitality and your graciousness today, and also to the board for the opportunity to speak and always making sure there's comment time. But I was very encouraged today by what I learned from Ms. Coleman's report, and also with Dr. Johnson's presentation. And that's why I always encourage in meetings like this, because you learn so much about what our state agencies are doing and what the possibilities are. Much of what I had in my first statements was comparisons between the advisory board and Friends of the Earth, believe it or not, because I went back and studied your charter, and there is so much language in there that is supportive of the values and the mission of Friends of the Earth, which is a national and international environmental group. And I must say, I had no plans to even mention that petition, but I did not sign it for myself. That was on behalf of the organization, Friends of the Earth, which has given full support to what is embedded in there. But it's encouraging. It's encouraging to read the charter and then to hear so many of the other things that I've learned today that are in other documents related to DEQ as well as the Environmental Justice Group. I want to say now, I'm on page 2 already, I respect the commitment and efforts of this advisory board to engage with communities in the challenge of decision-making that is inclusive. Threats and best practices are best observed by peoples on the ground, which is why we at Friends of the Earth believe wholeheartedly in the practice of free, prior, and informed consent that is outlined in the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP. UNDRIP was endorsed by the United States in 2010 under the Obama administration. We were the last country within the boundaries of the United Nations Charter to endorse the UNDRIP. But that is important because according to the United Nations, development experts recognize that SPIC, is not only important for indigenous peoples, but it is also good practice to undertake with local communities. As involving them in the decision-making of any proposed development activity increases their sense of ownership and engagement, and moreover, helps guarantee their right to a development as a basic human rights principle. And as I read the documents that I've read related to DEQ and the Charter, especially around environmental justice and equity, I find those same beliefs embedded within those documents. So we are not on a different page when it comes to decision-making, especially around impacted communities. So the work of the Advisory Board's Cumulative Impact Committee especially, I can't say enough about the work that Jamie has done as chair for that committee, working with the folks in Rockland, and we can be hard-headed. Y'all have all heard the great state of Rockland. It honors the spirit of SPIC. Thank you for your support of that work. Through outreach to communities on the ground, DEQ can achieve a more accurate view of what actually takes place after development decisions are permitted. As an example, and now I'm going to be specific, and I'm sorry that Jeff isn't here because I know this is something he has brought up in the course of his work with the advisory board. But as an example of a specific opportunity, it rests in the 2018 resolutions by both the Columbia Tribe of North Carolina and the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs. They suggest there are opportunities for DEQ and tribes to come up with formal guidelines for tribal consultation. And it isn't specifically about tribal consultation because there is that unique government-to-government relationship. But as I stated before, the UN recognizes that free prior informed consent is beneficial to all communities. So what is ever learned through developing a consultation policy with state tribes will benefit all communities, especially at a place like Robbinsville where you have 68% of the population is either Native, African American, or Latino. Moving forward, well, to my knowledge, there are no formal tribal consultation policies within North Carolina agencies or across state government as a whole. Moving forward with these recommended policies and considering further means to bring in the voice of communities on the ground, the North Carolina DEQ will be on the cutting edge. And I want North Carolina back on the cutting edge of things that we have kind of dropped off of a little bit. North Carolina DEQ will be on the cutting edge of ensuring that all North Carolinas experience free, prior, and informed consent. Thank you for your time and your commitment. Together we can expose dangers that threaten the health of people